There comes a moment in an empath's life that feels almost forbidden to acknowledge. A moment when you begin to see clearly that the place where you first learned to silence yourself was not the outside world, but inside your own family. And the realization doesn't arrive with anger at first, it arrives with grief. Because you understand that the very people you loved, the very people you depended on, were also the ones who unknowingly taught your nervous system that your feelings were negotiable, that your comfort was secondary, that love was safest when you were the least complicated version of yourself. And maybe you've had this private thought before, the one you never say out loud, the one that whispers, why did I always have to be the understanding one, even when I was hurting? And by the end of this, you understand why your nervous system still pulls you into that role automatically, even now. And you also have the exact words you can use the next time someone expects access to you that costs you your peace. Because this pattern didn't begin with weakness, it began with adaptation. And here's the part most people never explain. When you were young, your nervous system was constantly scanning for emotional safety. You learned to read tone, facial expressions, silence, tension, not because anyone formally trained you, but because your body was trying to protect your connection to the people you depended on. And connection to a child is survival. So when love felt warm and present when you were easy, and distant or tense when you had needs, your nervous system made a decision without asking you. It decided that being easy was safer than being authentic. And that decision followed you into adulthood without you realizing it. And you might notice it now in subtle ways, like how quickly you sense when someone is upset, how automatically you move into comforting them, how rarely you pause to ask yourself if you even have the capacity. And here's where it becomes painful, because you're not doing this consciously. Your body's doing what it learned to do to prevent disconnection. And the loop opens here, because you may wonder why you keep giving even when it drains you, why you keep staying available even when it hurts. And the answer is not that you lack strength. It's that your nervous system equates being needed with being safe, and losing that role can feel like losing belonging, even when logically you know you deserve rest. And listen closely to this next part, because this is where change begins. The moment someone asks something of you, and you feel that subtle tightening in your chest or stomach, that hesitation that appears before, your mind explains it away. That sensation is your nervous system speaking to you. It's your internal boundary appearing in real time. But if you spend years overriding that signal, your mind quickly replaces it with obligation, with guilt, with the familiar script that says, they need me, I can handle it, it's not a big deal. And you comply, and on the surface, nothing dramatic happens. The conversation continues. The relationship remains intact. But internally, something else happens. You leave yourself behind in that moment. And here's the part no one tells you. Self-abandonment doesn't feel dramatic. It feels normal, especially when it's been practiced for years. And this is why empaths often feel exhausted in ways they can't explain. Because their nervous system is constantly prioritizing external harmony over internal truth. And you may have experienced this as that quiet loneliness that appears even when you're surrounded by people, that sense that no one fully sees you, but the deeper truth is that you were never taught to fully see yourself. You were taught to adjust yourself, and the pattern continues not because you're choosing suffering, but because your nervous system believes it's choosing safety. And here's where the second loop begins to open. Because there is a sentence, a simple sentence that interrupts this entire pattern, and it may feel unfamiliar at first, even uncomfortable, but it creates space for you to remain connected to yourself while still honoring others. And that sentence is, I need a little time to think about that before I answer. And notice what happens when you imagine saying it. Notice the discomfort, the fear, the guilt that might appear. Not because the sentence is harmful, but because it represents a new experience for your nervous system. It represents self-inclusion. And your nervous system may interpret that as risk back. Oh, it's unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. It means unpracticed. And this is where your awareness becomes your anchor. Because the next time someone expects immediate emotional access to you, you can pause, breathe, and remember that you are allowed to exist inside the interaction too. You're allowed to feel your own signals. And honoring those signals does not make you unloving, it makes you present. And here's the deeper truth. Your nervous system is still learning. Real connection does not require your disappearance. Real connection can survive your honesty. But that shift begins in small moments, quiet moments, where instead of automatically abandoning yourself, you stay, even if only for a few seconds longer than before. And that pause is not weakness. That pause is where your nervous system begins to realize something it has never fully trusted before. That you are no longer dependent on abandoning yourself to stay connected. And once that realization begins, even gently, even slowly, something inside you starts returning, and it changes more than you expect. And when that awareness begins to return, it doesn't arrive as confidence right away. It arrives as hesitation, as a quiet moment where you notice yourself almost saying yes automatically, and then something inside you pauses, and that pause can feel uncomfortable, even frightening, because your nervous system is being conditioned to believe that your role is to maintain emotional stability for everyone else. And when you interrupt that role, even in small ways, your body may react with guilt, with anxiety, with the urge to quickly fix the discomfort by returning to what feels familiar. But here's the truth. Your nervous system is slowly learning the discomfort you feel when you stop abandoning yourself is not danger. It is withdrawal from a pattern that no longer protects you. And this is why many empaths feel confused during this stage, because externally, nothing dramatic has changed, but internally, everything feels different. You may notice that you are less available in the ways you used to be, less willing to absorb emotions that were never yours, less able to ignore the signals your body sends. And this is not because you have become cold, it is because you have become honest. And honesty with yourself is the foundation of emotional safety, even if others do not immediately understand it. And there may be moments when someone reacts to your new boundaries with disappointment, confusion, or even subtle pressure. And in those moments, your old conditioning may whisper that you are doing something wrong, that you are being selfish, that you are risking connection. But listen closely, because this is where your power deepens. Connection that requires your self-abandonment was never true safety. It was adaptation. And you were allowed to outgrow adaptations that were built for survival, especially when they no longer serve your well-being. And this is where you can begin practicing a different response, not one that rejects others, but one that includes you. You might say, I care about you, but I don't have the capacity for this right now. And notice how that sentence honors both truth and compassion. It does not attack, it does not explain excessively. It simply acknowledges your reality. And your nervous system may still react with tension when you say it, because it is experiencing a new form of safety, safety that does not require you to disappear. And this is where your healing becomes embodied, not through forcing yourself to change overnight, but through small, consistent moments where you remain connected to yourself while interacting with others. And there is a simple reset you can practice when you feel the old pattern pulling you back in. Yes, something gentle that helps your nervous system remember that you are safe even when you choose yourself. Begin by slowing your breath. Inhale gently through your nose for a count that feels natural. And as you exhale, let your shoulders drop slightly, let your jaw soften, and bring your attention to the center of your chest, not to change anything, but to notice that you are here, and silently remind yourself, I am allowed to stay with myself, and repeat that for a few breaths, because this small act interrupts the automatic impulse to abandon your internal experience. And over time, your nervous system begins to trust that you are no longer leaving yourself behind. And there is something else that becomes important during this stage, asking yourself honest questions that bring your awareness back inward. You might quietly ask yourself, What am I feeling right now before I think about anyone else? And then, am I about to say yes because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? And then, what does my body need in this moment to feel safe? And finally, what would it look like to respect that need, even in a small way? And these questions are not meant to create pressure. They are meant to rebuild trust between you and yourself. Because for many years, your attention was trained outward. And now it is learning to include your internal reality too. And as this trust grows, you may begin to notice something surprising. The relationships that respect your boundaries begin to feel calmer, more genuine, less draining, while the relationships that depended on your self-abandonment may feel strained or distant. And this can bring grief, not because you are losing your ability to love, but because you are losing the version of yourself that existed only to maintain connection at your own expense. And grief is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is a sign you are becoming more real. And there may be one more sentence that helps anchor you when guilt appears. One that reminds both you and the other person that your needs matter too. And that sentence is, I'm learning to listen to myself more. And this is part of that, and you do not need to justify it beyond that, because your nervous system is not asking for permission anymore. It is asking for partnership. Partnership with you. And the more you respond to yourself with presence instead of dismissal, the more your nervous system begins to relax, the more it realizes that connection no longer depends on your disappearance. And this is where something profound begins to emerge. A quiet sense of stability that does not come from being needed, but from being whole. And you begin to understand that empathy was never meant to cost you yourself. Empathy was meant to include you too. And as this realization settles into your body, gently and gradually, you may notice that the trap you once lived inside her became invisible, not because you escaped it suddenly, but because you stopped participating in it. And in the next video, we'll talk about how empaths rebuild their identity after breaking free from roles they were conditioned to carry, and how to feel safe being fully yourself again.